Hello, this is my Circ07 A Attempt. My name is Christian Williams. That is November 5th, 2021. This program here, we're using what we learned in BNC and compiling them together, and we're also adding a few more components to get something more interesting along with adjusting our code. This code is going to be using two buttons to toggle the states of an LED. However, I've decided instead of just using it to turn it on and off like flipping a switch, this will instead cause the brightness to fade up and down, depending on how we program the code. This is very similar to what my pinwheel attempt did, where we had two buttons controlling the speed of the pinwheel. So first off, we have some constant integers. As we learned previously, constant integers won't change, so they're very useful for dividing pins. So the first six there, you can see we have red button 1, red button 2 are set to the number of the red push button 1 and 2 respectively. And then we have our green button 1, green button 2, blue button 1, blue button 2. Makes it fairly easy and just compact to remember those. And then we have our three constant integers defining which pins control our three LEDs, namely a red one, a green one, and a blue one in 9, 10, and 11. Now, because we are going to be changing the brightness, that is an analog function. It's not a digital function. Digital is just on-off. Analog allows us to set the specific brightness of the LED. So we have to use pins 9, 10, and 11 because they are the analog pins on the digital row. If we used a pin that didn't have a squiggly on it, I think I've mentioned that before, that denotes that it is not an analog pin and we can't use it to get this function. Then we get to our setup here. So we are declaring our three LEDs as outputs and declaring our 6 buttons as inputs. Fairly simple. And then we have three integers that we're going to use later in the program to help define the speed of, or not the speed, the brightness of each LED. And I've named them VR, VG, and VB. So it should be pretty obvious which one is assigned to which in each program. Now to get onto the loop. So we have learned in this chapter a little bit more in detail with decision statements. So going more in depth here, we have our if followed by an else if statement. So if the digital read of the first button is low, meaning that button was pressed, this RB1 being the top button, it will use a increment operator to increase the value of VR, which will initially start at 0 by 1. If the else if statement, so if this button is hit, otherwise if this button is hit, if the second button is hit, that value will be decreased by 1 using that operator here. The other thing we need to do is we need to constrain the value of the LED using that constrain function. So we are constraining VR to be between 0 and 255. So these increment operators or decrement operators will only go up to 255 and down to 0. We're not going to mess with the negative numbers, and 255 is the max that our LED can do anything with. Then we're using analog write in order to get this fading. So we're going to analog write the red LED using the new value of VR as calculated between these if statements. To start with, it's going to be 0. So our LEDs will remain off when the program first boots up. And then we have a delay of 25 milliseconds before it writes and raises or decreases the increment. So you can make it really, really slow by making that 1 second. So it goes up to each bit. So you'd be waiting 255 seconds to get it to fully be on. And then because we used an if, else if, we have a second decision statement. This does the same as the first, but we are controlling our green LEDs using our green buttons. Otherwise, the increment operators are exactly the same. And then our third one controls the blue one, doing the exact same thing as the first two. So using those three decision statements, we are controlling 6 buttons, and will therefore be able to control the brightness of each of the assigned LEDs. So what that looks like in real life is this program here. So to go a little bit in detail with the wiring, we have, you can see our 6 buttons up here. So this is RB1, this is RB2, GB1, GB2, BB1, BB2. So this button will raise the increment and therefore make the LEDs brighter. The second one will make the LED dimmer, brighter, dimmer, brighter, dimmer. 3 yellow cords are going into these pins. We don't have to worry about the buttons being in analog or digital, so we can put it in pin 3 and pin 4, and nothing will be different from there. So pins 2 through 7 are controlled by our buttons. You can see the resistors and LEDs going to ground there. And then, as I mentioned here, you can kind of see with pin 10. Pin 10 is our analog pin. 9, 10, and 11 are all analog, and so therefore the white wires are connected there, and then that way we can get our red, green, and blue LEDs to fade up and down. If we had used 13, we wouldn't be able to do it because that is not an analog pin. Then you can see we have the resistors here, and then just to make it kind of more aesthetically pleasing, I included a little bridge so we could have an LED on this side as well. That wasn't necessary. This program works without those, but I just wanted to be a little bit more aesthetically pleasing. All right, so now to demonstrate what it does. First button here should raise the increment of the red LED, so I just hit it once very quickly, and you can see a little bit of light. If I hold it down here, the red LEDs will get brighter and brighter. And then if I hold down the second button, you can see the red LEDs will get dimmer and dimmer. There we go, they're all the way off. Now the second set of buttons here, top one will make the green buttons brighter. And you will notice that the green LEDs are significantly brighter than the reds. That's just how they were made. There's nothing going on in the program or anything. The green LEDs just show up brighter to us than the red LEDs. And then we can decrease it here. And you can see it's getting dimmer and dimmer and dimmer and dimmer. So to give you an idea, one tap, they're already that bright versus one tap with the red. Obviously the green ones are a lot brighter. So then the blue ones do the same thing. And I'm not going to go all the way up there. That's good enough for purpose. And the nice thing is, because we are using stored values and decision statements, unlike my Circ07 attempt, these LEDs will remain on even if no buttons are being pushed. That's the power of the if statements, and using those constant integers is this creates a toggleable function as opposed to just completing the circuit. So that, if we hit the reset button here, that is my Circ07 A attempt. I hope you enjoyed seeing that in more detail, and thank you for watching.